Chapter 19, Back to the Past. 100 years earlier, the mayor of Palm Brinks had commissioned Max to venture into the abandoned mines in search of Zelmite ore. The task was more important than it first appeared. With enough Zelmite, the town could expand the Blackstone Railroad, opening new routes beyond Palm Brinks and giving its people the chance to see more of the world than the familiar streets they had always known. For Max, it was exactly the sort of challenge he would usually meet with Monica at his side. But this time, she was not there. The early sections of the mine proved more difficult without her. Every monster encounter felt longer. Every blocked passage demanded more care. Every echo in the darkness reminded him that he was travelling alone. Still, Max pushed on with his usual determination. He had faced danger before, and although he missed Monica's confidence, her humour, and the way she always seemed to make the impossible feel manageable, he believed he could reach the Zelmite on his own. Eventually, he arrived at the miners' break room. It was a welcome pause after the oppressive tunnels, a small pocket of calm carved into the depths of the mine. Max took the chance to catch his breath, check his equipment, and make sure he still had enough supplies to continue. The air was stale, and the silence pressed in from all sides, but compared with the dangers outside, the room felt almost safe. Almost. As Max surveyed the break room, a sudden blue radiance flared before him. He staggered back, raising an arm to shield his eyes. The light was bright enough to drown out the gloom, filling the room with a glow unlike anything the old mines had seen in years. For a few seconds, he could make out nothing but shifting brilliance. Then the light faded. Max lowered his arm cautiously. Standing directly in front of him was Monica. Her back was turned at first, as though she had simply stepped into the room from another passage. But that was impossible. There had been no sound of footsteps, no warning, no explanation. One moment he had been alone, and the next she was there. When Monica turned to face him, she wore the same expression Max remembered so well. Bright, brave, and full of restless adventure. Her smile came easily, warm and infectious, as though nothing strange had happened at all. But behind that smile, Monica was hiding the truth. She knew what waited for Max in these mines. She knew the danger he would face, and she knew how close that danger would come to taking him from the world altogether. Yet she could not let him see that. If Max realized she had come here knowing too much, he would start asking questions she could not safely answer. So she played the part, curious, cheerful, slightly reckless. The Monica he expected. Max stared at her, utterly stunned. His mouth opened, but for a moment no proper words came out. Monica? How did... he stammered, grappling with the reality before him. Monica let out a breath. She had not realized she had been holding. Relief warmed her voice, and for one honest moment, she did not have to pretend. "Whew, I'm here," she replied, her words conveying a sense of relief and joy. Max blinked, still trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Monica was supposed to be in her own time, far beyond his reach, yet there she stood, as real as the stone beneath his boots. "How did you get here?" he inquired, still attempting to make sense of the situation. Monica's smile did not falter, though her answer came with a carefully chosen half-truth. "I asked Crest, And she let me have a star glass, Monica replied, bending the truth about acquiring the star glass since she never actually requested it. Nonetheless, everything else she stated held true. I used it, and, well, it brought me to this time period. After what happened with Griffin, time travel was forbidden in my time. But hey, no sense in sticking so strictly to the rules now, huh? The explanation was light-hearted enough to sound like her, reckless enough for Max to believe, and vague enough to conceal what really mattered. Monica had not come because she was bored, lonely, or eager for another adventure. She had come because Max needed saving. Still, she could not let that urgency show. Casting an innocent gaze around her surroundings, Monica feigned ignorance. Where are we anyway? Max seemed to steady himself, now that he had something simple to answer. He glanced around the break room, then back at her. This is the Palms Brinks mine. I'm just about to start looking for some Zelmite. They need it to expand the Blackstone Railroad. Monica nodded as though this was all new information, even though every word confirmed she had reached the right moment, the right place, the right Max. Her chest tightened with relief, but she covered it with enthusiasm, letting her face brighten as if the idea of exploring an abandoned mine sounded like nothing more than an exciting diversion. Sounds like fun. Let me help. Max studied her for a second longer, still clearly puzzled by her sudden arrival. But whatever doubts lingered in him, they were outweighed by the simple comfort of having her there again. Max had always been brave, but he had never been too proud to accept help, especially not from Monica. At last, he nodded. Okay. Monica's smile softened. To Max, it looked like the beginning of another adventure. To Monica, it was something far more fragile, a second chance. Monica could hardly believe it. Max was there, alive, breathing, whole. After everything she had feared, after everything she had fought through to reach him, the sight of him moving through the mines, as though this were just another adventure, almost overwhelmed her. Part of her wanted to tell him everything at once. About the danger waiting ahead, about Flotsam, about the fate she was desperate to prevent. But each time the words rose in her throat, she stopped herself. Max was fully committed to helping the people of Palm Brinks. He had taken on this task because the town needed Zelmite ore to expand the Blackstone Railroad, and once Max set his mind to helping someone, there was little point trying to pull him away. Monica knew that much about him better than anyone. So, for now, she would stay by his side. She would watch his back, make the journey easier, and ensure he reached the end alive. Once the task was complete, she would tell him everything. As they moved deeper into the mines, the tunnels narrowed around them, the air grew colder, and their footsteps echoed against the stone. Max glanced over at her as they walked, curiosity finally getting the better of him. So, Monica, how did things unfold for you upon returning to your time? Monica's expression softened. For a moment, the adventurous mask slipped, revealing something heavier beneath. It was far from easy. Upon my arrival in the kingdom, I found myself obligated to assume the role of queen, since my father was dead. Max's eyes widened in shock. You became queen? Monica gave a faint, humourless smile. Yes, it's true, but every moment of my time as queen was filled with utter resentment. I felt confined, devoid of personal freedoms. Merely being a princess meant I had minimal autonomy, obligated to have guards accompany me everywhere outside the castle, purely out of fear of assassination. However, the suffering escalated once I ascended the throne. Max fell quiet, allowing her to speak without interruption. Monica appreciated that. She had spent so long being spoken at by advisors, nobles, guards, and officials that simply being listened to felt almost strange. On a daily basis, I endured tiresome official gatherings with the numerous noble houses that governed our lands. While some of these houses maintained a cordial disposition, owing to their alliance with my late father, the Medici house proved to be the epitome of torment. The head of their household became obsessively fixated on marrying off her sons to me, not out of love, but solely to ensure the continuation of their bloodline on the throne. Although the lady's younger son, Arnold's, did have an inherently gentle nature, which could have made being together bearable. Max frowned, concern cutting through his confusion. But what if he was merely putting on an act? Max interjected, raising a point of concern. Once you and he were bound by marriage and had a child, his true nature might have revealed itself. Monica slowed slightly. The thought struck her harder than she expected. Her eyes widened as she considered the possibility properly for the first time. In the palace, she had been so exhausted by pressure and expectation that Arnold's gentleness had seemed like a small mercy. But Max was right. Kindness could be performed. Patience could be strategic. A man could present himself as harmless until he had secured what he wanted. I never contemplated that possibility. However, I don't need to worry over it, as I am now permanently confined to this era. And surprisingly, I have no regrets about that. Max looked at her for a moment, trying to take in the weight of what she had just said, permanently confined to his time. Unable to return to her own, no kingdom, no throne, no future waiting for her, except the one she built from here. So, what do you envision yourself doing now that you are living in this era? This time, Monica's answer came more easily. A spark returned to her eyes as she began to describe the life she had imagined during those long, lonely moments in the future. She wanted to stay in Palm Brinks. More specifically, she wanted to live with Max if he would have her. The idea sounded bold when spoken aloud, but it also felt right. His time, chaotic and workshop-filled as it might be, had always felt warmer to her than the castle ever had. She spoke of the railway too. Once the Blackstone Railroad expanded, they could travel beyond the edges of Palm Brinks and see the world together, not as princess and inventor, not as queen and subject, but as partners in adventure. There would be new towns, strange landscapes, ruins to explore, people to help, and stories waiting far beyond the horizon. Then her thoughts turned to the town itself. Monica mentioned Max's earlier explanation that the mayor intended to dismantle the wall surrounding Palm Brinks to allow the town to grow. The idea excited her, but it also worried her. Expansion could bring opportunity, trade, and freedom, but it could also leave vulnerable people behind if no one paid attention. She wanted to organize a charity fundraiser to support the citizens during the transition, especially those who might struggle with the changes, lose work, or need help adjusting to life beyond the protection of the old walls. Max listened to every word, and the more she spoke, the more his smile grew. He liked the sound of it, all of it, the travelling, the charity, the promise of a bigger world. But more than that, he liked that Monica was already thinking about how to make this era her own. She had lost an entire life, yet here she was, planning what came next. Max found himself admiring her all over again. Unbeknownst to Monica, he had always admired her. Not simply because she was brave, though she certainly was. Not because she was a princess, either. If anything, that had always seemed like the least interesting thing about her. What Max admired was her spirit. Monica was unlike the girls he knew in Palm Brinks, many of whom were expected to lead settled, predictable lives within the town's walls. Monica was determined, independent, and unafraid to speak her mind. She could be stubborn, impulsive, and far too proud for her own good, but she was never dull, never passive, and never willing to let the world decide who she ought to be. Max respected that, perhaps more than he fully understood. The deeper they travelled, the more dangerous the mines became. The first monsters emerged from the shadows without warning. Bats swept down from the ceiling, their wings beating wildly in the stale air. Horned rams charged from side tunnels, hooves striking sparks against the stone. Spider ladies crept from dark corners with unsettling grace, their eyes gleaming as they prepared to strike. Even the treasure chests could not be trusted. More than once, a mimic snapped open its false lid and lunged at them with jagged teeth where gold should have been. These creatures were stronger than the enemies they had faced during their earlier adventures. Faster, too. Their attacks were sharper, their movements more aggressive, as though the mines had twisted them into fiercer versions of familiar nightmares. But Max and Monica fell into rhythm almost at once. Max used his tools and weapons with practiced precision, creating openings and keeping enemies at bay. Monica moved with speed and confidence, striking when the monsters overextended themselves and covering Max whenever something tried to flank him. They fought like two halves of the same instinct. Not perfect, not effortless, but trusting each other enough to move without constant explanation. Each victory strengthened Monica's resolve. Flotsam was still ahead. She knew that. The thought of him lingered at the back of her mind, like a shadow at the end of the tunnel. But with Max beside her, alive and fighting, she felt the impossible become a little more possible. She could save him. She had to. Eventually, they came to a fork in the path. Two tunnels stretched before them, each swallowed by darkness. After a brief glance at one another, they agreed to take the left route first. It proved to be the wrong choice. The passage twisted for a short distance before ending abruptly in a dead end. Broken stone filled the far wall, and there was no visible way forward. Max sighed, clearly disappointed, but then something near the corner of the chamber caught his eye. A chest. He approached it carefully, no doubt remembering the mimics they had already fought. Monica stood ready, watching for the slightest twitch, but when Max opened it, nothing attacked. Inside was a small stash of dynamite. Max lifted one stick, turning it over in his hand as he examined it. The dynamite looked old, but still usable. Exactly the sort of thing that could break through weakened walls or clear loose rubble blocking their path. Monica immediately recognized its value. They could not afford to ignore anything that might help them. She urged Max to take it with them, pointing out that the mines were unstable and full of obstructions. If they came across a fragile wall or a collapsed section that could be safely cleared, the The dynamite might make all the difference. Max agreed. With the dynamite secured among their supplies, they retraced their steps back to the fork in the path. This time they turned right, heading deeper into the mines, and closer to the confrontation Monica had crossed time itself to change.